Right. Very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for spending time with us today, these late hours. I'd like to thank the previous speaker, Dr. Krishna there. I'd like to thank the previous speaker, like I say, for his informative talk. I have maybe one or two comments I'd like to maybe make about that presentation before I continue with mine.
Yes.
I'm following on the presentation by Professor Kaya earlier this morning on Ubuntu philosophy in public health care. And I think I'd like to make reference to the health and healing methods of African traditional medicine, because it is normally considered to be preventative, curative, rehabilitative. And its guiding philosophy in African traditional medicine is Ubuntu. And what underscores this philosophy, what underscores the practice of African traditional medicine, is that interconnectedness of people, nature, and the spiritual realm. According to Ubuntu, African traditional medicine and the practitioners of African traditional medicine are meant to have no material gain from their practice. They're not supposed to receive money. It is a taboo. And this equates to a very strong code of ethics and a sense of service to all, which is something I think we were promoting as conventional medicine as well. And that, I think, even equates even more to a very high sense of professionalism and integrity. And I think that is common across that particular, not just as a health, African traditional health practitioner, you know, the one that you would be conventional, but also other professional disciplines within African traditional medicine, which is midwifery, bone setting, mental health. And I have maybe something, as Dr. Krishna left us with some questions, and he told us we can go away for lunch and come back. I maybe want to leave him with a question and he can think about it and we'll discuss when I'm done. What happens if you encounter someone? I'm an African traditional health practitioner. I come to you as a biomedical practitioner and I tell you I don't believe in the concept of HIV and AIDS. That concept of that disease I do not believe in. How would you respond from an ethical perspective and as a biomedical practitioner? Second question, in your list, you had one of your slides towards the end, you had, I think it's kind of how you characterize the different professionals, and I think you had the expert professional fairly down the slide. And you mentioned that one of the characteristics of this expert professional would be their unconscious competence. Maybe I would like for you to explain that one. What does an unconscious competence mean? But that just takes me to my presentation, which is looking at the universality of Ubuntu ethical values as a moral philosophy in public and environmental healthcare. Okay, so it's often believed that the cultural and ecological specificity of indigenous knowledge systems, its worldviews, its value systems, it's been criticized for its inability to have any sort of relevance outside of its cultural context. As Prof. Kaya mentioned earlier, Ubuntu, there's a saying that says, I am because we are, my individuality is understood within the societal context. But that is believed, there's a belief that that only belongs to the African communities. That philosophy only belongs within an African context and therefore has no universal validity. This presentation, or our presentation, however, will demonstrate that the relational philosophies, the values of Ubuntu, like solidarity, compassion, respect, responsibility, dignity, sharing, and love, are very much prevalent in the context of public and environmental healthcare, and they are also very much prevalent in other moral philosophies of the world. We're able to comparatively and diversely conceptualize these. some of these other religions and philosophies in the world, as I'll demonstrate today. And we also show that these relational philosophies and value systems, ways of knowing, are very much prevalent in social structures and social practices that have direct impact on human and environmental well-being. So, just as a background, it's like going a little bit backwards. All indigenous societies have within them a sense of ethics, and that is normally articulated in their worldviews and belief systems, and it generally provides guidance. As you mentioned, we all have a moral philosophy within us, and it tells us what is right and wrong, and it helps us to judge the character of a person. And as I've already mentioned, associated with indigenous social structures, like a family, a community, where the social relations that we have within our within these structures are the foundation for us to ensure harmony, justice, fairness, and cooperative living. So, like other indigenous communities, African traditional cultures or societies have developed over time ethical systems and principles and value systems that are meant to guide their behavior and ethical conduct. And given the diversity of African cultures in the continent, I think Professor Kaya had mentioned earlier that sometimes we think that Africa is a village, one little village, when it's a continent of so many countries and so many ethnic groups. So these ethical philosophies are usually articulated in various cultural and linguistic concepts in different parts of the continent. So in Southern Africa, where South Africa falls within, this is known as Ubuntu. And it basically states that a person is a person through others. It's like how we say namaste. It's where you recognize the other person through our humanity and their humanity. And these values are shared across the continent, and it describes the capacity in an African culture to express those principles and values. And it's in the interest of building and maintaining communities that are just and fair. It is based on the reality of interdependence and relatedness, something that we've been speaking a lot about, unity, connectedness between humans, the natural environment, and the spiritual world. So, if we missed Professor Kai's talk in the morning, he did mention that character is very central to the Ubuntu philosophy. So in a world where we have different knowledge systems and associated value systems, I would think that if we want to talk about universality, we must look at how we understand it and how we articulate it. And maybe how we express ethics or how we express morality is very important. Do we all express morality and ethics in the same way? So, within African languages, it's found that ethics is very closely related to one's character. So, we've got some examples here. Among the Ewe in Ghana, there's a phrase that has reference to someone that may have no character. Similarly, you have among the Igbo in eastern Nigeria, you have amongst the Shona people in Zimbabwe, about references to someone that may not be ethical, who has a very bad character. And then amongst the South Sutu communities, there's also perhaps a reference to either someone that is not ethical or unethical, and someone that might be considered to be morally right. So, now we have to do the comparison, to show how we have a universality. In Islam, there is a reference to one's character, and the implication here is that morality is conceived in terms, or in essence, in terms of one's character. In Hinduism, we have the sense of duty, which Kirtan was talking about when we were doing the walk in the garden. So it constitutes one's duties and basically the right way of living. It says that if someone has dharma, or you're practicing dharma, you're having a sense of duty and the right way of living. In the Buddhist worldview, there's this understanding of perfection of character in terms of welfare for others and even for yourself. And then Confucianism, they have the emphasis on character for the individual and for society, and it is one of the 6 virtues of Confucianism that relates or refers to the character of a person. Now let's go to health. I think we want to understand something about health in this particular workshop. So Professor Kai had mentioned that, and I think we've heard extensively, that health can be considered to be a holistic concept where we look at the physical, the social, and the spiritual dimensions. And again, I'm going to look at a point of universality from Ubuntu and other moral philosophies, where we show that spiritual care is very critical in spiritual dimension of health. And the advantages is that it provides a better quality of life and reduces depression and despair. So it's very closely associated with the value of compassion, and it features very prominently across all moral philosophies in the world. So according to Ubuntu, it is the ethical duty of the African health practitioner to restore a sense of value, to first alleviate those feelings of one feeling isolated. I'm sick, I do not need to be left alone. I do not need to be in despair. The African traditional medicine practice and healing methods consider compassion, respect, dignity, and love as being central to restoring a sense of well-being to those that might be ill. And this even is extended to the caregivers of the person that might be ill. So if someone is sick, the entire family is now carrying the burden. So the traditional health practitioner now understands that he needs to provide that sense of understanding, care, restoring the sense of well-being, not just to the patient, but also to the entire family in order to restore balance to the community. So these values are communicated at an interpersonal level. I think Prof mentioned right at the end towards his presentation that there is an interaction between the African health practitioner and the patient, but not just one-on-one in a physical sense. Here in this realm, the ancestors of the African health practitioner and the ancestors of the patient are the ones that engage in dialogue to give history of the person, the history of their ancestors, to understand the source and the cause of the disease state. So let's go to other areas of the world now and other moral philosophies. In Islam, spirituality is one of the dimensions of healthcare, and the Quran provides much guidance on health, particularly on spiritual care, to the extent that God introduced his book on the book of health in a few verses of the Quran. So as with Ubuntu, the Quran shows that there is love and kindness towards others are very prominent features of Islam, and it is based on the belief that human beings need love and friendship, and is especially critical among people that are ill. And as with African traditional health practitioners, Islamic spiritual caregivers use empathetic words to provide comfort and to establish a caring relationship with patients. So they also ensure that they follow certain religious rituals in the time of sickness, and consider that this is the most important time to have religious rituals being conducted when someone is ill. When faced with disease, disability, even the prospect of death, many patients would like the physician to address their emotional and spiritual needs. So, this spiritual element of health is evident in the Hindu system of medicine. And according to religious texts in Ayurveda, the knowledge in medicine was considered to be sacred, with God being the ultimate source of this knowledge of life. In Buddhist disciples provided ultimate service when they provided care to the sick. And then we even have examples of emperors who made provisions everywhere in their kingdoms, usually for medical treatment for both people and animals. Now I move to the right to food and healthcare. The Ubuntu principles of solidarity, of community and personhood highlights the right to food and healthcare as part of my human dignity. In the Quran, spiritual care is very closely associated with nutritional care. It is prescribed that a person should attend to his nutritional needs, and particular reference to pure food is made in the Quran. In the promotion of longevity through good health, Ayurvedic practitioners advance a very balanced lifestyle through proper nutrition and supplementation with medicinal plants. So health practitioners consider the classification of foods in terms of taste, content, and spiritual practices of the patient. So for instance, some Hindu patients will not consume garlic or onion, as it's believed that the properties of these foods will disturb their spiritual practices such as meditation. Alternatively, or similarly, in the path of life worldview of Buddhism, there's a promotion of diet as part of incorporating healthy behaviors into your life pattern. And again, similarly in Confucianism, he promotes the principle of building health through one's diet and advises that one should not eat too much and not talk at meals. So certain foods such as ginger were also promoted, and it was believed that ginger reduces internal heat and fever, and eating a bit of it before meals would help in your digestion. Now we come to the areas of social structures and social practices. So in the African context, an individual exists in a dynamic system of social relationships. As I mentioned before, it was family, community members, and our ancestors. And therefore, the traditional African approach to healing is communal, advancing the notion that whatever affects the individual also affects the whole family. And I think Dr. Krishna had mentioned that we have to consider these when we are dealing with patients. So this is to ensure that the patient does not feel like he or she is alone. So, according to Ubuntu values, community members develop a shared will to survive through personal responsibility, accountability, sacrifice, suffering, and the spirit of service. So solidarity, according to Ubuntu, includes the development of interpersonal, biological, and even non-biological bonds. So African traditional health practitioners would encourage the community to express these bonds of togetherness, interconnectedness within the community. And as Prof had mentioned, that comes in the form of singing, working together, traditional dancing, storytelling, and celebrating, performing rituals as part of community living. And these were then central to Ubuntu-based healthcare and compassion of families and the persons who are ill. So this communal view of healthcare is similar to that of Hinduism worldviews, where the needs of the individual are conceived in the greater context of family, culture, and environment. And as a result, family members, especially the elders, can often have a strong influence in the decision-making related to health matters, including informed consent at times. There's even in Confucius beliefs, there are certain individuals within the family structure that might have certain duties, responsibilities in terms of ensuring the health care of their family members. Similarly, there's a concept like this in Islam. Wait for Bobby to take a photo. Okay, compassion as a value of Ubuntu can assist patients such as those living with mental illness. Compassion can be integrated and assisted in communal life, as this value describes the ability of African people to reach out in friendship and in solidarity to others, practicing humanism in a very sensitive way. In Hinduism and Buddhism, we can maybe describe it as karuna, where it's a foundational value that builds nobility of character and cultivates loving kindness to mitigate suffering. Okay, I like the fact that I had to speak after Daryl because he mentioned his mom, and I know I also talk a lot about my mom because the role of a mother in maintaining moral health in African families and communities is very significant. And it's also a significant feature in the practice of Ubuntu. The responsibility of imparting moral standards of behavior and virtues to their children is a responsibility of the mother. And this responsibility is considered to be very critical in the health and the life of the community. The passing down of traditional ethical values in African communities, such as Ubuntu, preserves that life of that community. So for instance, mothers impart knowledge on personal discipline, on sexual morality, chastity, fidelity, self-control through stories and proverbs. It is also evident in the role of mothers and women as carers and nurturers in their domestic healthcare practices. So comparatively in Islam, the role of the mother is afforded the highest status. It's commanded that kindness, respect, and obedience is necessary for parents, especially, and preference given to the mother. Do good and serve your mother, then your mother, then your mother, then your father, and then the near relatives, and then so on. I think there's even reference in the Quran about the responsibility of mother, not just during birth, but through the breastfeeding process and forever lasting. In Hinduism, mothers are considered so sacred that they're acknowledged even before God. So we have the saying of Mata, Pita, Guru, Devam, so it's mother, father, teacher, and then God. So, and the respectable and responsible position of the mother was so great that even Buddha raised the status of women in society. Alright, so if we talk about human health, we also have to talk about environmental health, because we've just spoken about community health now. So, Ubuntu embodies deep respect and includes attitudes and behaviors necessary that not only for a harmonious life with humans, but other forms of creation, as well as the ancestors. So this, I'm not going to have to read everything, but you'll find that the part that I've highlighted is that you find commonly there's a reference to compassion for all life forms, compassion for all. Everything is a manifestation of God. Again, in Islam, I'm going to, because Bobby's here, I'm just going on. The guiding indigenous ethics advance the perfection of human behavior and character, and that whatever behavior you would extend to God, you also have to extend to all of His creation. So that oneness, that unity, that compassion for all is universal across all moral philosophies. In terms of examples, in Hinduism there's a number of references to the worship of the divine in nature, in sacred texts. So in terms of environmental, we have daily rituals to revere our rivers, our mountains, our trees, animals on the earth. And some of these ethical values can be shown where we say that the earth is a manifestation of the goddess and must be treated with respect. The 5 elements are the foundation of the interconnected form of life. Our duty, as Kirtan was talking about in the garden, is our responsibility to the earth. And by living simply, it's a model for a sustainable development. And our treatment of nature directly affects our karma, which Kirtan was cautioning Daryl about. Don't do anything bad. Your karma will be a different outcome. So, like in African indigenous communities, Indian communities, like other traditional communities, did not have an understanding of the environment as something very separate to other spheres of life. A number of rural Hindu communities have maintained strong communal practices to protect local ecosystems such as forests and water sources, and these communities carry out these conservation-oriented practices, not something environmental, but rather something as part of their duty. Again, I give an example of a leadership practice when there was an emperor that gave the order, in spring, wood choppers could not be used in mountain forests, so that bushes and trees can grow. In summer, dense fishing nets could not be used in rivers and pools, so that fish and tortoises can grow. And this shows an awareness of the need of ecological protection, and therefore, our own health and well-being. So I've come towards far end. Similarly, in African spiritualism and Ubuntu, water bodies such as pools and waterfalls and rivers contribute to our well-being. And there was a general consensus in African cultures that spirits dwell in these waters or in some part of the water and sacred pools. And in essence, this allowed for such areas to have less human interference. Whether that was actually true, one cannot know, but if someone from outside the community went there and said, look, nothing's happened to me once I've jumped into this pool, once I've thrown oil into it, you've now distorted that taboo, and people then can abuse and exploit. So for instance, the Shona people believe that certain rivers are inhabited by a spiritual creature, otherwise understood to be like a mermaid, that can capture somebody if it comes near. But it also states that if the person is captured, that person can have spiritual powers and therefore enriching the community. So both the fear and sort of respect for that particular spirit prevents them from fishing and doing their laundry in the river. So the commitment of African people towards environmental conservation and wildlife preservation is further indicated in the core being of African and indigenous knowledge systems, which is normally transmitted, as I explained, through taboos, proverbs, clan names, and folklore. Clan names, okay, I'll explain that one later. So we have some sacred mountains as well. Mount Kailash, it's revered as the source of 4 major rivers in Asia, and apparently it's the center of the world in Buddhist belief. It's the axis. In Hinduism, it is the home of Lord Shiva, who is understood to be the father of enlightenment and not just the destroyer, while the lake at the foot of the mountain is understood to be the mother equivalent. So the sacred nature of this mountain, the status that we have assigned to this mountain, does not allow for one to climb it. Instead, you go around it. In Confucius believes it is necessary to establish a relationship of love with nature and take it as our friend, regarding it as unethical to chop a tree or to kill an animal at an improper time. Hence the inclusion of nature deities that can be represented by natural elements. In Islam, the world was created by God and therefore warrants our respect and obedience and gratitude towards Him. And this includes a respect, and that respect is now extended to animals and people and the environment. If one looks at the Quran carefully, it's said that there are more than, or about 650 references to ecology and conservation within the text. And there are some of those. And I come to my summary. So if we kind of match what Prof. Kaya had said earlier and what I've been saying today, there's some common themes. The universality of Ubuntu relational philosophies and values, principles and values of solidarity, compassion, dignity, love, in the context of public and environmental healthcare, can be demonstrated across all other moral philosophies, and is articulated in the interconnectedness, in the spirituality aspects, in our moral languages, in this brotherhood and common good that Daryl had mentioned earlier, the essence of community and family, and this idea of responsibility that comes with rights. So I hope that. Thank you for your time and attention. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mayashri. Comments or questions?
Dr. Krishna is ready. He's ready.
Comments?
No, it's difficult to ask questions in the areas which you have got very limited knowledge, because I'm not very sure about the spirituality you're talking about, and there is a good cohesion of different mythology or philosophy, Christianity, Buddhism, and all that. Thanks for your efforts. But to be honest, I could not get really what you means how it goes ahead. Maybe this is the sociological perspective. I understand that, but before I told that sociology is usually non-ethical, because we never blame the situation or the practices. In fact, because in sociology we are not there to guide people, this is wrong and this is right, but we are in a different discipline saying this is wrong, this is right, something like that. So I think we are in between. I guess a good presentation to be in between. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I must also say, it's also a misconception to equate it. Sociology is a study. It's not it will never be a moral ethic. So saying sociology is it's like comparing two things which are totally different. Sociology is a study. And also, when you do sociological study, I have a background of sociology myself, both at undergraduate to PhD level. When you do research, whether it's in sociology, philosophy, in biology, there are ethical principles you should follow. I don't know how you did your studies, there must be some ethical principles in sociology. Those who are doing sociology, you also, when you, in my university there, whether you're doing philosophy, you're doing sociology, environmental studies, we have a big office of ethical clearance to ensure that whatever you study does not compromise either pain or in whatever form the interests of the people you are going to study. So the ethical issues in the study, they're also there. And also whatever study you do, if it is to have any application, whether it's sociology, political science, or whatever there, the recommendation there, of course, they're not biblical that you must follow them, but at least they must have policy what? Implication. Otherwise, the government, there is no need of employing social scientists or for policy issues, because they do the study following ethical principles of research, and they provide recommendations which go into policy. And some of the policies, they have ethical what? Implications. So I'm trying to look at the whole thing in a more complicated, analytical way. Somebody, I think of yourself or one of your colleagues, was saying sociology, they just have to describe, is also false. So they're also supposed to be critical, supposed to be analytical, so that we contribute to knowledge, whether it's new or advancement of knowledge. So saying sociological is not ethical, it is not moral law. After all, ethics are not laws, they're just ways of life.
No, I don't mean that. There are two words, like one is unethical, another is non-ethical. You see? So when there is only description, there is nothing like we say this is wrong or right. So I'm just saying in that way. It doesn't mean like sociology is non-ethical or they don't follow ethical rules. It's not that. The meaning is that there are two ways we observe. One, we have got observational studies, right, in which most of the sociological studies are observational. So we observe things, we compare things, but we are not that much strong to suggest you are right and you are wrong, something like that. So let us limit only to that. I'm not saying others are non-ethical and we are only ethical. No.
Point is spiritual.
But the thing is that if you ask me, we are biased, you know.
Yes, bias.
We doctors are biased. Bias in the sense that we say, no, you are wrong. This is not good, like that. No, we say straightforward in most of the cases, because you tell what you believe in. But if you go to a little bit further in philosophy, like there are people who follow Hinduism or Christianism or Muslim. In this case, you cannot say, oh, you are Muslim, you are wrong, or you are Hindu, you are right. You cannot say that. You see? So these are two different aspects. So therefore, I start emphasize on the science. So when we talk about science, science is single. Fact-based. It's a single. There is no doubt. But there are many things to be proven by science that we agree. That's what our knowledge is limited. That's what we change book every 5 years. But only good part in modern medicine is we confess or we accept challenges. You can challenge any drug, you can challenge any theory. We accept it, but you have to prove. But there are areas, philosophical like in spiritualism or in religion, you cannot challenge.
Value.
Yeah, you cannot challenge.
Why? Social norms.
Because it's the more social value, way of life. You cannot challenge Hinduism, right? You cannot challenge Muslim. If you challenge Muslim, they will kill you.
Yes.
So simple.
That's not right.
No, so simple. No. You see the fighting in the, religious conflict. You see? It's a fact,
Yes,
whether you agree or not. And no religion is bad in itself. No religion says wrong about the life in itself. But you cannot say this is right and this is wrong. So that is the social perspective, right? So that is one perspective. So I was just lightening on that part. So I do not know that. So I do not want to touch that also. Therefore, there is a very popular saying by Nehru: if you don't disturb God, the God will not disturb you. So I don't want to disturb God.
That's true.
Thank you.
I think I want to maybe make a comment. I'm a scientist by trade myself, by training, but this distinction that sociology or social studies doesn't, in terms of ethics, it doesn't really feature. I maybe don't agree. We work daily with people, just as medical practitioners do daily. It's part of our research with our African traditional health practitioners, indigenous practitioners. We work with people. And we have to make moral decisions daily. African traditional health or African traditional medicine is not something new. It's not something that's been around for a short period of time. It has been the major form of healthcare for our people, and it has been doing a great job of ensuring health, especially in areas where people do not have access to healthcare. And if you ask the patient, where would you rather go? They'd rather go to an African traditional health practitioner. And they're in good state of health. Their overall health status is good. Now, trying to separate science from African traditional medicine, from my side, then sounds ludicrous. Doesn't sound viable, doesn't sound like something we can accept. If I bring an African traditional health practitioner here, and that's why sometimes it's not nice to talk on their behalf, I like to bring them here. You can have a very intellectual discussion about codes of ethics, practices, beliefs, not even belief systems. You don't even have to talk about belief systems and spirituality, but you can engage as professionals doing the same thing, providing healthcare to a patient. Those considerations and ethical considerations of an African traditional health practitioner, you'll find that they're not no different from the one that you promote. And they've been there since. If I have to take an example of biomedicine, we've always been looking in the pharmaceutical sciences for one single active ingredient that is like a silver bullet that can cure everything. And you can defend your medicine, like you say, using evidence. But if I go and take a formulation from an Ayurvedic practitioner or from an African traditional health practitioner, formulation. In the old days, this was discounted. Why? People are just mixing things and putting here, and they have no idea what they're doing. They do know what they're doing. We're now moving away from looking at one single, and we're looking at multi pathways, multiple receptors, to see how we can bring things together, different active constituents together into a drug. Because if I take Panado or any sort of drug, I'm taking Panado because for all the different audiences, we take a painkiller and we take it maybe 8 of that a day or for a prolonged period, you might develop an ulcer in your stomach. An African traditional health practitioner understood that centuries ago. Hence, they understood that you maybe needed to deal with the pain in your head. But at the same time, you needed to protect your stomach lining. And therefore, they made a formulation, a concoction, to address different pathways in your body. If someone tells you that I can bring you a health practitioner from Rwanda, an old man, 90-year-old man, I bring him here, and he can describe to you what is hepatitis A, B, C. And he's never seen a microscope, and he's never looked inside your body. You will have a difficulty having any discussion with him, because you have no idea.
Let me ask you a question. If you are sick, where do you go?
I go to my traditional health practitioner first, not to my GP. Me personally.
Not to GP.
Not to a GP first,
Okay.
no.
So let's put this way. These are, if you say the Ayurveda, oldest system, 5,000 BC, okay, still in practice. There are some logics, there are some evidences, maybe not strong enough to convince everybody, but a large number of people believe into it. Okay? So if we are talking about the belief system as such, okay, I have nothing to say, because I do not have, this is something like, between us what we are discussing is whether this Buddhism is okay or Muslim is okay. How can you answer? No answer. No answer, as I say. So if we are talking about the belief system, okay, you really believe in this indigenous system or this herbal system, it is that. It is there. That's what I gave at the last one example. Like, you may not like to treat a patient who is smoking, but you may be liking a person who is taking part in sports. Both they know the risk, health risk and all that. So these are the belief system. So when we talk about the belief system as such, I have no argument. Okay, I'm clear on that. So I'm not arguing that whether their system is very good or not, whether it is bad or good, whether our system is foolproof or not. Okay, so if you believe in a system, you promote that system and people are free to do that. Okay, the people are free to do that. It's no question. But what we look is that since we believe in these modern systems, okay, so isn't it a little bit contradictory? Because if you have got appendicitis, or if you have got bursting like ectopic pregnancy, well, maybe that's it. So these system of treatment are quite different.
Sir,
Yeah.
you were all talking about tertiary care level. So we are not talking here tertiary care level. Primary, secondary. Primary includes belief, norms, social, spiritual. These are all are included here. So promoted disease or primary health care is one part of this philosophy part. So that's why we are promoted in public health care. This like this all. Sir, you are
No,
all
respect-
disease and
No.
not care. This is a
Respect-
tertiary care level.
You see,
So we decided, where doctor decided is last stage. But here is just primary health care, ethical, and any type of disease or beliefs or social norms. These are all our primary health care, including leading to the promoted secondary care.
It's okay,
So that's
it's
why.
okay, it's okay, it's okay. Like if you see the primary health care 8 components,
Yes.
okay, and people's belief system, their like
This
way
is
of life.
preventive medicine.
Okay, so these things should be respected.
Respected is the
All
all our
cultures are
primary
have got
part
respect.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, religions also have got good respect. But at the same time, being a student of science,
Yes.
okay, we should not encourage too much in the things which are having, like, what to say, doubtful value.
Okay, so
That
that's why
is- that is there.
I think that's why
So that's
I asked.
so you have to guide.
Okay, I'm asking again. If I have to take this man who's never been to school, he's never been to university, he's never met someone.
Lucky
Okay.
man.
Yes, and I mean in the sense of coming to, but he can talk to you. He knows it's called hepatitis A, B, and C for you.
How can?
But he knows it by his own indigenous
How can
way.
he know ABC?
And that's what I'm saying. How can you have
Is a fortune teller?
No, and that's the thing. You've reduced him to a fortune teller.
No. Like
You see-
without
Because you're
evidence
not
and without
prepared.
examining blood, if you say he can say A, B, C, then it's okay. We
Yes.
keep him in the
I
hospital.
understand your
say, I don't
disbelief.
think,
I do.
Too.
I do understand your
It's
disbelief.
okay.
I really do. Because the models of modern and biomedicine are not able to assess and validate what happens in African traditional medicine or any other indigenous medicine system. We are still backward in biomedicine. We're not able to find it because I'm saying, as an example of the medicine and the drugs that you are prepared to defend, you said you can test it and you can validate it 100 times, safety and efficacy. If he does the same thing and says, test my thing, it's safe and it's efficacy, it's effective. Because your
It
technology
proves, that's
doesn't.
okay. That's okay.
Because your technology cannot prove this. Because you are stuck and not able to understand what is happening inside here. You are not able to prove it according to the
But I
model.
surely support Professor because of the fact that chemicals by which medicines are made, these are of say 150 elements or something. I don't like. I hate chemistry. But on the other hand, natural elements in plants and plants, trees, everything, they are the number of species, amount of species is huge. So just because I don't know what is inside these and how it actually works, and it has not been validated by my so-called science, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Well, if it was the case, we wouldn't have included in the definition of health. It is physical,
Social,
mental, and then social and spiritual well-being. Many of doctors in Bangladesh, they would say, form of treatment, like I do meditation myself, and I take that as a form of treatment.
It's a one part of primary
From
care.
childhood, this is like my personal scientific evidence that I have been suffering from sneezing, continuous sneezing, dust allergy. I couldn't stop it with Misolastin, I couldn't stop it with any other medicine you name. He also gives me like fexofenadine and everything. It doesn't get stopped. It only gets stopped when I put my hand here and press this button. That's it. So that's called acupressure. And there are other things which, like my father had some problems with his hand. He couldn't be treated, but he was later treated on by acupuncture. So I have evidence for that. So as a result, perhaps by science, I might call it, okay, fine, it works. So I get back to my point. Just because I don't know what it is, I cannot actually place that is right or that is wrong. So I guess science is very much, I go along with the professor. Science, yet till now, is very much backward.
I have firstly a question for some time on Skype. So a comment from Andrew, please. Andrew, please go ahead. Tell us.
Hello. Thanks for the great debate. This topic of Ubuntu is going to occupy my mind for many, many days and weeks to come. From a philosophical side, and as we are in a multidiscipline and transdiscipline discussion here, trying to integrate different logics is really important. And analytics in the scientific ways, of course, are relied on propositions of truth and what is accurate that are assumed. And Ubuntu tries to assume. Sorry, and forgive me if I do not represent it correctly. I'm trying to. I'm not a native Ubuntu participant, so hopefully one day. But Ubuntu is trying to make the universality of it is its natural state. If we refer to it as a system that is inclusive, it tries to expand and radiate outwards, whereas analytics is something which tries to reduce inwards, tries to reduce what is and distill what is truth, right? That is a simple truth proposition. To integrate the two is where we get the best of both worlds. And listening to you guys today has been so wonderful because I see two passionate perspectives. And how they work together will be the key to how they achieve success together. And there is space for both. So I think this debate will go on for a long time, but the duality of it doesn't have to be conflict, doesn't have to be a problem. So thank you again. I'm watching the sidelines with many others, and it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you for all the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Andrew is, in fact, you're going to meet on Wednesday. He'll guide us through the Medicinal Plant Center in Mandal University in Thailand. Professor Ro Takahashi is also online. I think, Ro, you wanted to say something. You've been turning your mic on. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, Ro.
Yes, I'm very interested for discussion. I think that the interdisciplinary can be applied into the brain system. We have been associated with the artificial brain, like doing that chess or shogi in Japanese to compete for the analog type of brain sports game. But fighting with a machine, with computer, with that professional brain, nowadays is a computer could win to that professional player. But only one thing that computer may not be able to win to that computer is sensitivity and to be inspired, or we can call the improvisation, to make immediately making action to feel that what people want to do. So the scientific approach can be modified mathematical approach, but mathematical approach may be able to include the artistical approach as well. That is includes the how do you say chemical changing. So for listening to that discussion, it was very interesting. Only we could find out the changing, the difference is how we may be mingling the whole studies within the one unit. Is this is the most important topic. So I really wanted to be with you in face-to-face in near future, and thank you very much for discussion. This is my that feeling that it was very good discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Atanasio, would you like to say anything? Atanasio is from Mozambique, so maybe Ubuntu will be interesting from a Mozambique perspective as well. Okay, so Maya?
It's just appreciating the debate in general. When it comes to mathematical values, we are in African perspective. I think of it. There are some values which are limited on the type of perspective. So if we think of universalizing the values or globalizing them, it's first a little bit the sense of analysis, the analytical, and to go through those tribal communities and to reflect and analyze the kind of values which are becoming priority for them. So from what was said previous about Ubuntu, actually in philosophical African philosophy, that is one of the points which is becoming a fundamental for the African philosophy, matters of values. But there are other things which they also need to be started a little bit, be analyzed a little bit further, so that we can also bring them into universal perspective, just so that they can also contribute in matters of stimulating what becomes as a value in the African perspective. Because, as I've said, we have many tribes and which values which are need to be stimulated. So, analyzing the issues of indigenous knowledge and other points which we are looking for information to the values, it might be very essential to us as Africans, stimulating this, the knowledge of African people, especially indigenous, in matters of promoting the values in African perspective. So thanks.
Thank you, Atanasio. And I think it's interesting we have remembered there's a question still in line in the room here. Before I pass to Maya, for me it's interesting the reflection on the different traditions, because for me wisdom is wisdom and knowledge is knowledge. If I'm with one with the universe and energy, which is part of the essence of taking the medicine and our body, every tradition mentions it. So it's no longer, the indigenous knowledge is not classified to a tribe or a nation or a religion, but rather to the knowledge itself. So everything becomes same, but it's expressed in different ways, whether we use karuna or I or love or amor or whatever we're going to use as our term. But there still may be nuances in all these terms. But Maya, please, and then I'll pass to our colleague.
I think maybe just to help understand what the center is doing, We work with traditional health practitioners not to help with education processes and to transform education curricula. And it's about now giving some sort of insight into the philosophy behind the medical practice, but also to show how, I give you an example. We have a student who is in the discipline of maths, and his father is a diviner, a sangoma. He can provide diagnosis of disease states through divination, through discussion with ancestors. And the student is conflicted about how his maths fits with the work of his father. And our job and our work is to find ways of how to show the holistic nature and discipline of African traditional medicine, or holistic nature of African traditional medicine by making it more explicit how the different scientific disciplines come into that. It's not now the job of the Sangoma to go and say, I need to prove to you. He is already validated based on his generational experience. So it is now for the sciences, which are still very young, that have been made them separate, become distinct disciplines, now to come and see how they fit into the practice of African traditional medicine. And maybe we can discuss about how maths goes into African traditional medicine, how pharmaceutical sciences goes into it, how soil sciences goes into it, how microbiology goes into it, biotechnology, and so on and so forth, at leisure. Okay, there's Kirtan.
We have a question here, please.
Thank you. I just want to make 4 points. First of all, we should believe that spirituality is far ahead than science. It's true. Because if we see that in India, there are so many places where science failed to give answer. Like I tell you, in India, there is a place called Jwalamukhi Devi, where a fire used to come out from a section of wall. Many scientists have been gone there, and they are not able to find out from where it is coming from, and it's coming continuously from years and years. There are so many places in India, like one we have Hanwa, there is a mountain from where water used to come out on a same speed, and I don't know from how many years it's coming out. On the same speed, it's be a summer, winter, rain, nothing. The water is coming out on the same flow, same way, and that water also disappear while going down. So we have to accept it that science have failed to give reason for so many spiritual things which exist on this planet. Thirdly, that sir said that there is a debate on the religion, that we cannot say Hindu is good, Muslim is good. Why should we debate on it? Because ultimately what all religions say, you have to work for the peace. Ultimately the goal of all religion is same. Then why should we have to debate on that Hindu is good, if your theory is good, your way of perception is good, that's good, you follow it. But ultimate aim is to find peace and for this world. So there is no debate of Hindu and Muslim. It comes when we say Hinduism is superior than Muslim, or Islam say Islam is the superior than Christianity, or Christianity say we are the superior. Then the debate comes. And finally, I last want to that in medical also, sir, in science, my friend is from science background, even I too from 12. We said that the disease in our body started from our mind. If somebody I pinch you, yeah, you are not looking well. My mind directly start reading. Oh, am I feeling low? Something else. So maybe I think that the science what my grandmother used to tell me, that in ancient time, like indigenous way of treatment, like we used to cure the problem. Like if I have a fever, my grandmother used to treat me like I have a fever of 100 degree. For one day maybe I have a fever for 104 next day. But the treatment is like that, it should be cured for all over the life. But if we say this modern science theory, it only just hide the problem for particular time. If I have a problem something, if I take medicine, it may be cured for half an hour, 1 hour, for 1 day, for 1 month, for 6 months. It not cure for the whole year or whole of my life. So this is the way that spiritual or indigenous way of medicine is. We used to treat the mind that look, you have a cancer, okay, no problem. We have this, if you follow this, if you practice yoga, if you do something this, if you pray God, these are the state of mind. If we say these are not scientific, but these are the things which affect the mind. And ultimately the disease started from the mind only. If my mind say I am healthy, I can work for 24 hours. But if my mind say I am not healthy, I want to sleep, if my body is working, but then also I feel sleepy. So this is the thing. Thank you.
Any other comments to contribute?
It's just let us
Most
conclude
interesting.
like this. Like most of the, facts, or let's say what we are calling evidence-based proof science is that they are coming from observation. You see? So at the beginning, people started observing. They said doing this is the occurrence, doing this is the. It's a long time practice and observational study. That is the must. Okay? This is the primary. So if you say you observe something happened with this type of chemical or some drug, if this happens, so we do not say, oh, this is Ayurveda. How can you say? You should not say. We are not saying that. But the point is, what we should try is, we try to make it as evidence. For example, I give you in pharmacology, you know how these modern medicine people find out this arrhythmia drug? Okay? They made from like how they use this belladonna for pain abdomen. This is all herbs. You see, they observed from there. But what they did was, the observation was made more scientific. If it works to you, it should work to me. And our validity level is around 90-95%, not 100%, okay? So this 5% we left for by chance. You see, there are so many things, it happens, which we don't know. Don't think that I'm claiming that this modern medicine knows everything. No, that's what I said. These books are outdated so quick. You know, new informations are coming with evidence. So, for Ayurveda people, for indigenous people, our request is one. Please try to make it more evidence-based.
Yes,
They can make it,
yes.
right?
Yes.
So this is the science, so that we can challenge it. But don't say that if you don't know any answer, is it spiritual? If you don't know any answer, is God? It's not acceptable. At least for me. Okay? We don't know. We accept it. But it does not mean God knows. My forefather knows. No. We try to know. There is no end of the knowledge. But what we do, we learn in a systematic way. Okay? There are systems of learning. There are systems that we prove. Okay? So that was my saying. Okay, so we do not undermine any indigenous practice. But we should not encourage in the sense that, oh, he knows hepatitis B, he knows hepatitis C, he does not care about HIV. Like that is not tolerable for me, at least. But like how you make a diagnosis, and this is something like saying, no, there was a very popular, I teach in China also, no, there was a very popular saying, Chow and Lai, Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, very popular. And what they say, no, because in China smoking and drinking is very common, they have got a very good culture. So China is a place I saw where you can smoke in the hospital,
Yes.
or in the no smoking zone. Okay, so common, like so liberal. So what they used to joke is that, you know, Chow and Lai did not smoke, did not drink, died at his 50s. Mao Zedong sometimes smoked, sometimes drink, around 70s. And he was drunk all the time, like Deng Xiaoping, and he is 90. And our Girija Prasad Koirala, the former Prime Minister, died at 84. So, who are you to say me not to smoke? You see? So don't put that way, my request. Because these are not evidence-based, maybe by chance. Because our forefathers, they all smoked, maybe we know that.
Yes.
You see? But now, these days, we had to smoke. Oh, don't smoke, don't smoke. Why? Because can I say my father died at 94 and he was smoking all his life? So who are you to say me not to smoke?
Yes.
If I say like that, maybe not very polite or maybe not very, justified. Okay? So that's what, let us try. Being scientists, all of us, try to make it in a systematic way. That drug, I'm not saying it's not working. It's working, but let us make it more systematic. Try to make it proof. Try to win the Nobel Prize and all that. If we can treat HIV and all that, right? So thank you. That's the idea.
Thank you. Any other comments or reflections?
I like to add something.
Yes.
For science, I like to add maybe for the best thing I love about science is that it acknowledges that I was wrong and I don't know.
Yes.
I love this fact about science. And about the topic, in my country, we say about this Kobiraji. That means that traditional treatment system. So we have been treating for many years when the modern medical system was not there. So nowadays, in practice, we say that if you are being treated by a Kobiraj, then you are destroyed. Like they are giving you false treatment. But they have been treated by Kobiraj for many years when the modern medicine did not come. So what happened? Can you explain? Is there any they have derived from the traditional treatment to something else, or is their purity has been lost, or should we? I think there is nothing learn. There's nothing to learn from them, from current Kobirajas of Bangladesh, because in a way they have lost their purity. If their treatment may or might work previously, they are not working now. So what is the difference, or what's happening? Are they losing their purity or anything else?
The antibiotics you guys give.
You know where I'm going to start is with Dr. Krishna.
Okay.
The thing about pharmacology, he made a reference, and he said where you know that if this medicine is used for hypertension, you can standardize it and use it for hypertension, and use it for hypertension, and use it for hypertension. Whereas the speaker just before him from the board of Pharmacy Council that was here before, he said that if you have hypertension, you have hypertension, you have hypertension, you are all different. And that is the understanding of an African traditional health practitioner. No one person who has the same disease state has the same cause. Your life, your lifestyle, your history is all different. Your life history is so different. Going back to your forefathers and so on and so on. When you come to talk about pharmacology, and you explain how pharmacology has got a 99.9, some 5% space where it doesn't work. Let's ask, you gave example of where a herb, belladonna or whatever it is being used as a herbal base for the constituents that we now use in medicine. So much so that modern medicine is now to go to reverse pharmacology to find medicines faster, because it has to deal or learn from traditional medicine practices. That's what reverse pharmacology is. Instead of taking 20 years to make a drug, we go to a community, we ask them, what are you using for hypertension? And we take that thing and we try and replicate it in the lab and give it to people. So the scientific basis of how they got to that point, nobody's really interested. And yet we're not prepared to give the credit when the drug comes out. The question from Rajiv, I want to maybe give Prof because that's the historical kind of thing, but I also want to say to Rajiv that I don't know the history of that particular practitioners. And regarding the purity of their practice, only they themselves can explain. For example, in South Africa, the African traditional health practitioners, as Dr. Krishna is explaining, we must become systematic about this thing. We are trying to help them become systematic because they're tired of trying to explain to someone when they don't need to validate themselves. It's working, it's been working. But to formalize it, they need to become accredited and certified. But they're not accredited by me, scientists in the university. They're not being accredited by some medical council. They're being accredited and certified by themselves. They themselves know who the charlatans and fake people are. They know who they've trained. So, according to your situation, perhaps there's a way of maybe approaching it in that way, about seeing how do they find, do they have their own ways and mechanisms. They know how to accredit themselves. What is the qualifications framework for someone to go from an intern, to an expert level? How many referrals? How many patients? They've got all of that. Our traditional health practitioners have that. And I want to one last point. When Dr. Krishna asked me, who do I go to? I don't even have to go to a Hindu priest for myself. I can even go to a Pakistani person that is in South Africa, in my community, and he can give me something, and it doesn't have to go anywhere into my body. I can carry it on me, I can have it as an amulet, and I keep it. And for me, somewhere in my head, like Ketan says,
Yes.
I now feel better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I would like just to say one thing. I mean, we are dealing with students here, people at different levels, writing their masters, their PhD, whatever. I think these workshops, which Daryl and you guys are doing, is to give students an opportunity to have different views on issues affecting bioethics. And as Daryl said, I mean, we are living in a world where complex local issues become global issues in terms of diseases, global issues become also local implications. So it's a time whereby knowledge systems are not supposed to be competitive. They're supposed to be what? Complementary. And there is no knowledge system which is perfect. Yes, as Mahashid was saying, India is pioneer in the reverse pharmacology, whereby it goes back in looking at what can they learn in traditional medicine, which instead of taking 30, 40 years, we can reduce that period to 10 so that public health care can benefit. And another important aspect is what we started talking since yesterday. Why the American Universal Sovereign Nation came into being is to decolonize the ideas we inherited. Some of us, or all of us here, we've been in Western knowledge. That idea that there is only one dominant way of knowing, there is only one medicine, there is only one science. We don't believe in that unless those who believe there is only one science. Because when people talk here science, you must follow science. What they are talking, the Western science. You see what I'm saying? The question here, even the people, we are working with the people from all over the world, Western world, whatever, they believe now that there is no one science. As long as people live in different ecosystems and different conditions, just as Mahashi says, you might have the same disease I have, but the causes might be different because our lifestyles where we live are different. The point is what Derek was saying, let us make knowledge systems complementary to improve public health care. And there is no one science, my brother. There are different sciences, but you are talking is Western science. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you. I think we